Okay, we're recording.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, May 1st. We'll call to order the City of Brainerd Personnel and Finance Committee meeting, and we'll start with introductions.
Alderman at Large Kevin Stunick.
Connie Hillman, City Finance Director.
Jennifer Bergman, City Administrator.
John Davis, Police Department.
Chris Schubert, HR Director.
Joe Langle, City Attorney.
Gabe Johnson, Chair of the Committee. We have 5 items on the agenda, the first of which is to reclassify Richard Berry from police intern to CSO. Chris.
Good evening. Richard Berry's employment with the city started in April of 2022 as a CSO, or also known as a Community Service Officer. In February of 2023, he was appointed to the Police Department Springs intern program. With that designation, he qualified the city to receive funding from Sourcewell as part of their Sourcewell internship reimbursement program. With the hiring of Laura Bundy as our summer police intern, we need to reclassify Mr. Berry back to his previous CSO position effective April 28th. This is because Sourcewell only allows 1 intern at one time per department. So with that, we just wanted to clarify that Ms. Bundy is currently attending school at Alex Tech. We realize she's only going to work a handful of days before she graduates or before the summer officially starts, but with that we wanted Mr. Berry to train her in, so that's why we needed to get her in as soon as possible. So with that, the motion, or recommended motion, is to reclassify Richard Berry back to a CSO effective April 28th, 2023.
Nice move.
Second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next item on the agenda appears to be the Public Utility Department recommendation.
So back in November of last year, the Public Utilities Commission had asked for Flaherty and Hood to do a study to give us some information about the organization of our Public Utilities Department. Specifically because we had 2 people at the top, and Flaherty and Hood came back with a recommendation that they felt that we should have 1. So on April 3rd, the council approved an internal-only job posting for that 1 position. We called it the Public Utilities Director position. 3 individuals applied, and the work group selected Todd Whitland to be appointed as the Public Utilities Director. In addition, the work group had several recommendations. Those recommendations were to approve the appointment of Todd Whitland as a Public Utilities Director effective May 2nd, which is tomorrow, at his current wage and to continue his fully paid health insurance. So he currently has fully paid health insurance per our employee policy manual, and if we follow the employee policy manual language at this point, he would actually be costing him money to have this promotion. He's not asking for an increase in wage, and that's why we're asking for that recommendation. Second is to approve the elimination of the BPU Superintendent and Finance Director Secretary positions effective immediately. And the third item is to approve the creation of the new BPU Finance Manager position, or whatever appropriate title we finally come up with, subject to job title and compensation information from Flaherty and Hood, and to authorize the initiation of that hiring process. With that, is there any questions? We were hoping Kara would have been here today. She was part of that work group to help us with this, but do you have any other questions?
Do we need 3 motions or just 1?
1.
Good answer. I would make the motion to recommend the top 3 actions that you just proposed.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is a discussion of the 2024 capital equipment and facilities budget. Connie?
Alright, so what we're looking for tonight is just input from council on the 2024 planned capital items and the long-term capital planning process, or the items that are on the long-term capital plan as well. If we look at the comparison detail, so if we start with facilities, we have the street sign garage placement. That's a new item. The existing sign is in poor condition and needed replacement. And we would also update the name of the facility to be the Public Works Maintenance Facility as well. We have the demo of the beach house. This is also a new item. The expansion of the beach and construction of a new facility near the beach is being paid for with ARPA dollars and DNR funding. If staff gets the DNR, if we don't get the DNR grant, if it's not awarded, there potentially is not enough ARPA funds to pay for the demolition of the existing structure as part of the beach expansion project. We have the memorial concessions, lockers, restroom, and shelter. These are moved to 2025. And of course, this is dependent on the master plan currently being done by the Parks Board. And really, all of the Parks Department is still kind of subject to change since they don't have their master planning done yet. We have the fire facility update. This is also a new item. All the items that were in the facility study that were done by WSN in 2019 for the fire department were not or have not been included in the capital facility plan. There was a separate facility study done for the fire department, and the $20,000 in the budget for 2024 is to update that study that was done 4 or 5 years ago. Then we go on to City Hall General. We have the generator in there that was voted down by council at the April 17th meeting. However,
Literally, the last time we met, there was a council vote on it, right? That was
Yes.
April 17th was the last meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Staff does feel that a generator is needed at City Hall to make it operational during a power outage. When the power goes down, residents call City Hall. Staff still needs to be able to pay the bills, process payroll, and access documents. When the power goes out, without a generator to run City Hall, this cannot be done.
So still no new information or compelling reason as to why you need a generator, you just want it, so regardless of what the council votes, you're putting it back in. Is that
No,
my understanding?
I would not say that's our understanding. In case of an emergency, the EOC.
Yeah, it wasn't compelling 2 weeks ago, it's still not today, so nothing's changed, you're just adding it even though 4-3 the council voted, we don't want it.
Yes.
Okay, that seems
Okay.
unfortunate.
So can I ask a question on that? I think it's very vital that we have a generator, and I know there's disagreement on either sides. But for the main reason for me, I come from that background of EMS and emergency services. It just blows my mind that we can't have a generator here, because this could possibly be an emergency operations center. And right now, the only places we have are this fire department and PD. So I think it'd be vital. So I don't know how we readdress that, or we probably don't at this point. But just for that reason alone, I think it should be looked at again.
Yeah, parliamentary procedure would say one of the 4 people in the majority of the vote would propose a motion to revisit the issue. It wouldn't just be staff throwing it back in the
No,
budget because
correct.
they feel like it.
Correct.
Right, there's a process for things.
I think that's definitely what we tried to write in this memo, was talking about the EOC. That the EOC is where the action is, where we need to be the support people to support those people and still process payroll and pay the bills.
Right, and the reason it's not compelling is because if some, act of God happens and takes out the fire department and the police department and all the county buildings, how functional is City Hall going to be with the generator? It's probably going to have the same amount of damage that the buildings across the street had. So it's,
And I understand your philosophy, but.
we
the
would
chances
probably
of
use
that
the
happen-
Northeast Fire Hall that does have a generator
Correct.
before we would use
Correct.
City
But all
Hall,
of
if
our
something
vital-
took down everything on Laurel Street.
All of our vital documents and nuts and bolts of the city are in this building.
But, hey, if a new cold bug shows up, we can work from home all summer, right? We have that technology, but we don't have that technology.
Actually, we had to have people come into City Hall, even when we were working from home. People still had to come into City Hall to do some work.
Well, bring your Honda generator with you.
I don't have one. That didn't work.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay, if we look at IT, if we look at 2024, the software, finance and permit to move to the cloud, we moved that from 2024 to 2025 to only have one major conversion each year due to vendor backup. 2024 will have the Laserfish move to the cloud. And by moving applications to the cloud, eventually the city will be able to reduce the number of physical hardware purchases, maintenance, and replacements along with other benefits. The phone systems, the phone moved to the cloud in 2022, so most of the phone equipment is no longer needed, just the physical desk phone replacement at the end of its life, which is determined by technology and changes to vendor availability. So we didn't feel that we needed the $20,000 in the budget anymore. Also in 2025, we moved the replacement from 2026 to 2025 for the ID card printer. Replacement changed from 6 years to 5 years. The current printer is struggling on year 4, and it was purchased in 2020. Then we have the battery backup. We moved the replacement from 2028 to 2026. Replacement was on a 5-year schedule. However, core network protection needs to be done on a 3-year placement schedule per industry and vendor standards. We have the council audio visual. This was moved from 2026 to 2028. And this would put the equipment on a 10-year replacement cycle. With the recent upgrades getting completed, the replacement can be moved out to 2028.
That's cameras and microphones?
Correct. And I'm sure some of the broadcasting equipment as well. The Wi-Fi hardware, this is a new item. The original Wi-Fi equipment is aging out and would need to start on a 5-year replacement. Then if we go down to the police department, you can see that we have it highlighted, but we do not have an amount in there. So the records management system, RMS, currently is owned by Crow Wing County, and the city pays an annual operating fee out of the operating budget. The parent company has informed us that the current system will no longer be support their RSM come later this year. So the information received from the sheriff's office is that Crow Wing County will again be the sole owner of the system, and the city will continue to pay an annual operating fee. A line was added as a placeholder as a new vendor has not been selected yet, and all of the arrangements have not been finalized at this point. So we may need something in the budget at some point. In 2027, we added replacement to upgrade the rifle replacement. We realized that we had a plan for pistol replacement, but not for the rifles. The current rifles that we use are handed down from the county and will need to be replaced prior to the pistols. Staff added a line for the rifles and will be on a 15-year cycle replacement. Then we have a buildup for the LADAD vehicle. This also is a new item. The county had previously provided a vehicle for the drug task force officer to use and is no longer and has not done for several years. The current vehicle used by the LADAD officer was received from the county and will be sold by the city in 2023. A retiring squad that the city owns will be the LADAD's officer's vehicle. We assume this vehicle will last until 2028 when we will need to lease a vehicle. So this amount will eventually be in the squad car buildup, but we wanted to call it out since it is a new item.
Right, and a heads up, Connie, I talked to you about this last week, heads up to John and Kevin and whomever. The idea of the LAD ID just being bankrolled by the city of Brainerd, taking our old automobiles with nobody else paying for it, will come to this committee. And we are gonna hopefully ask the county of Baxter, whoever's in, to all pay an equal share of it instead of a heavy share from Brainerd with nobody else paying anything.
So we'll have the later discussion on the next agenda, or do you want to?
Whenever we can, sometime before it comes up in the budget in 2028 or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fire replacement, we see a lot of changes moving around. Basically, it was to spread out the equipment purchases. Parks, again, it's subject to the capital or the long-term facility planning.
Master planning.
Thank you. Master planning that's being done. You can see the Lump Park has been removed as this is being paid for with ARPA and hopefully DNR grants. The Memorial Parking Lot Resurface, this was moved from 2024 to 2026. The Memorial Lights, we removed the $400,000. It now has been moved to 2033. We put it in 2024 just because with our whole budget, the way we were working last year. And again, that's dependent on how the fix that we have done works also this summer as well.
And whenever we get down to the history of how many people play softball compared to how many people have in the last 20 years. I mean, the Parks Director is working on it. I sent him an email like 6 months ago. I'm sure I'll have the answer real soon.
In 2025, where did it go? 2025 right here. The Buffalo Hills parking lot. So it's basically gone from a resurfacing to maybe a reconfiguration. We'll maybe keep it a gravel parking space instead of paving it. So the amount has gone down from $250,000 to $75,000.
And I like that idea. I'd like to hear more about it.
Right,
Just
and I think
because
that's the master planning.
I go to that park, during softball season and softball games, and we couldn't build a paved parking lot to accommodate all of the cars that are there, so we kind of need the gravel and park on the grass situation we have. So hopefully the $75,000 keeps that and just it makes it a little better,
Right.
a little more intuitive.
Right. When we go down the streets, we have a couple new items: the roundabout wood chips and the street sweeping screening. Say that fast 3 times. These are really repairs and maintenance items, but we want to plan for them in the capital budget so that we don't have our operating budget with the peaks and valleys. Just items that we have budgeted before in the operating, but when they come up, it seems like a big a big item to bite in that year, so we're hoping to plan in the capital plan and then transfer the funds in the year that they are to occur.
Question, Connie. That makes sense to me, since we do it once every 5-10 years to
Yeah.
budget it that way, but like with the street trees and the parks trees, if we're doing 25,000 every year, why isn't that just an operational expense? as
It
opposed
could
to a
definitely be
capital?
moved to an operating expense. It definitely could be.
Especially if we moved every year.
Right,
That
and
would
we,
make
and
sense.
we intend to for the foreseeable
Right.
future.
I know we did roll them over last year because we couldn't get the trees and that kind of stuff, so maybe if we can actually start replacing the trees every year, maybe we can move it into our operating. For sure. The street scan implementation that has been moved by Member Johnson, as he said, it has not been discussed with SPW yet.
Yeah, I don't believe there's been a council vote to move forward and do that. I know there were some presentations a couple of years ago. I don't know if there was ever action taken on it.
So that is our capital plan. Any further input from?
You know, this is one of the better looking ones at this point that I've seen, in my opinion, because you look and it's spending about $2 million, and next year it's spending about $2 million, and then the following year it's spending about $2 million, and then it's level. It's not, hey, we gotta spend $4 million this year, but in 2 years we're only gonna spend $1 million. It's nice and flat, and that stability can be budgeted for. So I like what's been done here.
And then if we look at the portion of the 30-year capital plan, we do see that we can continue to cash flow those plans over the next 5 years. Even at not increasing even our main levy. Like we talked about last year that we might have to do based on like, if we increase our levy by 3%, okay, let's increase our capital contribution by 3% or something.
Have the discussion, but when we're just throwing in generators and police cold storage and all kinds of random things, we're obviously over levying. So the discussion might need to be about decreasing.
But remember that we don't have inflation built in here either,
Yep.
so. There we go.
Thank you, Connie. Any questions, comments, good? Good stuff. I love a good spreadsheet. Okay, next up on the agenda is the discussion of the response from Lakes Media Collaborative. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We finally received a response from Lakes Media Collaborative's attorney. Among other things, their letter said that they have, quote, rendered all services promised to the city, unquote. Just a little bit of background, as you recall, the city terminated their relationship with Lakes Media, and the last payment was made to them in 2020 with 2019 franchise fees, so we did not spend 2020, 21, or 22 franchise fees going to Lakes Media Collaborative.
Did we have public access streaming in 2019?
We did not.
Well, they didn't render services then, but
And
continue.
2019, the building projects at the high school removed that connection from City Hall and physically ended the ability to broadcast city meetings.
But we paid for that then.
We did.
And we took the 2021 fees and basically did our own council chamber stuff.
So, okay, I read all of this, and I guess I didn't see the letter Joe sent to their attorney. Maybe it was in there and I didn't read all of this, but
No, it wasn't.
I
I do
don't-
have it.
I don't remember what Joe's letter said. We weren't demanding that they're legally obligated to send this money to us, are we? Were we, or were we just saying, hey, we gave you this money, you're obviously not using it, can we have it? Joe, do you remember what the tone or direction of the letter was?
Yeah,
I actually do have them.
Okay.
One was sent in June of 2022, requesting the return of funds provided to Lakes for the purpose of supporting public access television.
Huh.
So yes, a request to return the funds. To date, no response was received. I wish to emphasize that the council's request was not in jest. We provided a considerable amount of taxpayer funding for services that were not rendered. And it is the city's understanding from the 2021 meetings that a large fund balance remains in your account. Given that no services are being rendered and it is anticipated that none ever will be, those funds need to be returned to the city. Please advise your intentions within the next 30 days. Another letter was sent March of 2023. Last June, I wrote a letter to you on behalf of the city of Brainerd concerning the return of the funds provided to Lakes for the provision of public access television. Because Lakes did not provide the services for which it was paid, those funds need to be returned. I asked for a response in 30 days, but none was received. Please contact me or the city if you have any. Otherwise, this matter will be put back before the city council for discussion and action, which may include initiation of legal proceedings.
Okay, so I get, and we've known all along that we have no legal entitlement to the money, and I don't think we've ever claimed we do. We were just asking for it since they aren't going to use it. Joe, is there anything we could or should do, or do you think we should just drop this?
Well, unless you've got a breach of contract claim that you're willing to go after.
We don't have we never signed a contract.
Well, there's still, it doesn't have to be a written contract.
Okay.
If one party pays for something, another party does services, there's an agreement there,
Yeah,
whether it's reduced to writing or not. And you have to assert that there was an understanding as to what was paid for and not received, and go down that road and look back at what they provided, the timing of your payments. They're claiming that you always paid after the fact, and whether they in fact provided these services and so forth. And of course, beyond all that, you've got the issue of, do they even have anything? Where did it go? I mean,
So we don't actually.
how much time, money, and effort do you want to spend going after some of the money not even exists?
mm-hmm. So let's say they stole 700,000, they as in somebody, not any individual making it, but say $700,000 was stolen from a nonprofit whose organizational documents were in place for a very specific thing, as all 501c3s are. The city can't do anything about that, right? That's more of an attorney's general office type inquiry.
Correct. If you don't have or don't wish to go after a breach of contract type thing, then the misuse of funds by a nonprofit is not a city issue. That's not our.
Well, I think we should just send them a letter saying, hey, will you give us the money?
I suspect you know the answer to that.
I think we've asked that question 3 times.
Yeah, well.
I don't know if it's worth the energy to go after them financially when we, number one, they probably don't even know if they have the money. And then the cost of doing that is gonna be, why?
And if it is breach of contract, even if we agree that we paid them after the fact instead of before the fact, even if we paid them before the fact, it's breach of contract, it's only 1 year or half a year, so it's not $700,000, it's $60,000. Or
So is it worth going after that? Or just send a letter to that effect that, you know, we'll overlook, but the last year that you basically breached the contract that we had, and just see what the response is? I don't know.
So we sent a letter in June of 2022. We sent another letter in March of 2023. We finally heard back in April. In fact, Joe, I think your first letter might have been early 2022. So we can certainly send another letter and maybe we'd hear back in 6 months.
Well, I don't think we send any more to the executive director there. I think
To
we
the
have their
attorney.
attorney's contact, our attorney can send a letter to their attorney, I think we'd get a much quicker response.
Correct.
But, so I think I think you're right, Kevin, I think we should look at the timing. Did we pay them ahead of time or after the fact for services, 1, and then 2, when did they just abruptly stop delivering the services that we expected with the money we gave them? Let's at least look into how much money we're talking about.
Because I think the timeline will determine the money amount, and then they might just say, you know, you're kind of right, here you go, buy, go away.
Yep.
And we'll take our $650,000 to run.
Yeah, if they have the money that they put on their tax returns filed with the IRS that they do have.
Does that sound reasonable, Joe?
Sure, we can do some fact investigation and all that, and then come back to the council.
Okay. I like that, let's start.
Thank you.
Then referring them to the Attorney General is the next step. Well, he loves going after small people. Okay, next up is the discussion of right-of-way tree removal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So City Council adopted a tree policy in 2019 which regulates the removal of nuisance trees among other items in the right-of-way. So tonight's discussion primarily is related to whose responsibility should it be to remove right-of-way trees. Currently it is the responsibility of adjacent property owners. The city has been questioned by residents since the trees are owned by the city. They do have to get permission from the city's tree inspector to remove trees within the right-of-way. We have to look to see how healthy the trees are. They also have to get permission to plant right-of-way trees. So with that, staff did reach out to 5 similar sized cities, received 3 responses from Bemidji, Detroit Lakes, and Grand Rapids. Each one of these cities manages the trees in the boulevard area, specifically with their public works and sometimes parks department. and then contracts other dangerous or difficult trees to remove from tree removal companies. Just to give you guys an idea, staff typically takes around 30 trees in the right-of-way, probably 60 total. It's about 30 in the right-of-way, 30 private property. And then kind of an estimation with that, there'd probably be about 10 trees that may be considered difficult. I think this is probably on the high end of things, which staff, it does look at, probably about $2,000 per tree, which would equate to potentially a $20,000 increase with the budget to be able to do that. Jesse, the city engineer, as well as myself, did talk with Sean, the streets foreman. Many of the trees would be able to be removed by the streets department with no additional staffing. It's something that they would be able to handle. I know they do a lot of the maintaining and trimming of these trees during the summertime. So with that, staff did talk to SBW regarding this issue, and SBW directed staff to begin working on a more clear and concise ordinance. Right now we have 3 to 4 sections within our tree ordinance as well as right-of-way stuff. Getting this more clear and concise, and then also having it also align with the adopted tree policy. With that, SPW did want PNF to look at that based on the budget as well as some staffing in there to get PNF's recommendation on this. So staff did provide 3 options in here. Option 1 would be essentially what we have right now, recommend tree removal in the right-of-way remains the responsibility of abutting property owners. We make this a little bit more clear and concise when we're redoing the tree ordinance within our city code. Option 2 would recommend the city begins removing nuisance tree right-of-way trees in 2023. This obviously would affect the 2023 budget. And then option 3 would be recommend the city budgets for removal of right-of-way trees in 2024. And certainly can answer any questions.
I think if we're gonna be consistent with the communities around us, option 3 sounds like the best.
Option 3 does sound like the best, but if there was a nuisance tree in my yard and I were up to date on what the city council was up to, which I would be, like, well, they're just gonna remove it next year. So
Could that be
option
a
2 might be the
case-by-case situation based on the inspection piece?
It can be. So we already talked about this. There's nuisance trees that are dead that, particularly maybe aren't going to spread diseases. We don't have an emerald ash borer up here yet. That is something that does have to be part of this discussion. Right now we're working on an emerald ash borer policy. But then there's also, we do have to remove Dutch elms disease trees fairly fast. But then there's other ones that just, die for whatever reason. Those wouldn't have to be removed right away until maybe the next year where we budget for them. But ones that are dangerous, those are the ones that we'd have to take care of this year.
I just hate adding stuff to the budget that's not in the budget.
Right.
That's what
Yes,
to me,
we can hold
option
off,
3.
we'd be able to hold off on some trees.
So yeah, let's go option 3.
Okay. I make a motion to recommend the city budgets for the removal of right-of-ways, trees in 2024.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. We got 1 minute and about a half to get up something.
Takes me 4.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Joe. Good to see you guys down here.
I know.